motorsports season usually stops entirely during the winter months, halted by snow and ice. For those on the West Coast, the racing season carries on, as does Spec Corvette presented by Nanking Motorsport Tires. It's the first round of the season at Auto Club Speedway, and while it's the beginning of a new year, it's the end of the story of the Speedway as we know it, with a huge remodeling project transforming the facility into a short track. But before those changes, we'll run the opening round of the 2021 Spec Corvette season on a windy Sunday afternoon. You're watching Spec Corvette presented by Nanking Motorsport Tires, America's fastest growing budget racing series. This race series started in SoCal and has grown to several other regions: Florida, NOLA, the Great Lakes, Colorado, and the Northeast. It's had explosive growth through a series that only started 2 years ago. It's an official SCCA class and a NASA class in most regions. Spec Corvette's goal is to keep the cars as stock as possible with select parts to improve reliability. On 200 treadwear Nanking NS2R street tires, they're setting some of the fastest laps here this weekend. Our race format is 35 minutes of action, a 4-lap super sprint for race number 1 with a rolling start. Then we'll pull them over, reverse the grid, and go again for a second race, a little bit longer, generally 6 to 7 laps. The cars today, stock LS6 engines with surprise dyno testing to keep things equal, a 380 rear-wheel horsepower power cap. You can run a C5 coupe or a hatch allowed in this series. Nanking tires, of course, on all these cars. And some new names and new faces this time around: Kevin Missig, Patrick Howe, Christian Paluzzi, Darren Griffith, all new names to the series with some of the drivers we've seen in the past. Josh Carroll is here. Nguyen is here, as well as others that we've seen in the past, like Donny Yorke and Craig Dale. Working our way through Auto Club Speedway. This is about a 2.5-mile racetrack with about 18 corners. There's a look at it from up above. It's all going to start with a run down the front straightaway, carrying all the way through the banking under the exit of turn number 2. Then a hard braking zone into turn 3. That's a quick left-right combination into turn 4. Then all the way down to the double left-hander in turn 5. Then turn 7, 8, and 9. 3 right-handers all together before a little bit of a back straightaway run to a right-left combination, turn 12 and 13. Then 14, 15, or another juke to the right, back to the left, and then 16 and 17 will bring you back up onto the banking to conclude a lap here at Auto Club Speedway. Again, about 4 laps worth of racing for our first event of the day as we peel up onto the front straightaway, coming to the green flag this time through, and it looks like we're underway. Green flag for the Spec Corvette presented by Nanking Motorsport Tires. And the run down to the green flag, already 3 wide, it looks like, at the front of the field here, thundering on the banking here at Auto Club Speedway into turn number 1. Speeds climbing into 4th and 5th gear on board now as we look to the right. And there's a red car up the middle for a moment. He's going to go look a little bit wide on the exit at turn number 2. And then they'll have to straighten out to get into the braking zone for turn 3. Look to the inside here as they come out of turn number 2. And into the brake zone again. For turn number 3, cars fanning out into the braking zone, aiming for the curb on the left. A little bit deep there as we head into the infield section. Now slow and tidy. Keep the tires up underneath you. Don't wear them out. A little bit of dust flying from the background. And now streaming down towards turn number 5. This is a double left-hand corner. 2 apexes to negotiate here. On board with Patrick Howe as we roll through the first of the 2 left-handers. And now the second, a little bit of a big slide there out of the silver vet. He'll get it back under pace, and a big dust cloud there as they stream through and down towards turn number 6 and 7. That's the left-right combination I mentioned earlier. Car offline just a little bit. That's the silver machine. Left, right. Watch the curbing on driver's right. Then into the braking zone. Up at the front, it's getting real rowdy as we negotiate this very sharp corner. Again, street tires on these cars, so not going to have a lot of rear grip, and keeping the tire temp is so important here at Auto Club Speedway, especially when we climb back up onto the banking. Now down the back straightaway, heading towards turn 11. That's the right-hander here. Heavy braking zone. Going down from 5th gear, probably to 4th, even 3rd gear as we get slowed down. On board still with Patrick Howe. Right, back to the left again. And now getting set up to climb the banking and again to conclude our first lap here at Auto Club Speedway. And climbing back up onto the banking. On board now with Nguyen as we come up onto the straightaway now in the slipstream, which is so important here, carrying so much speed across the line for lap number 1. The leading driver is Josh Carroll, then Alan Hauser behind him in the 998, Craig Dale in 3rd, Meynet in 4th, then Donny Yorke, Nguyen, Christian Paluzzi, Darren Griffith, Kevin Missig, and Patrick Howe, the rest of your top 10, all Spec Corvette class cars. Through turn number 2, still on board with Nguyen. And he's chasing down the car in front of him. That's Donny Yorke in that red number 63 on the brakes down to 3rd gear. Now left and right again. balance the car on throttle. A little bit of counter steer there. Bit of a slide under throttle, then the run down to turn number 5 again, the double left-hander. It looks like Nguyen is closing in just slightly on Donny Yorke in that number 63. Yorke nice and tidy, though. No slide out of that corner. Just up the road from Yorke is Gene Meynet in the 228 car, another new name that we're not familiar with after the last couple races from last season. Quick juke to the left. You see the hands of Nguyen just dancing very delicately through that section and coaxing the car through these slower corners. Now on board with Josh Carroll, who's the current race leader, all out front by about 0.8 of a second over Alan Hauser in the 998, another new name to the series. Deep on the brakes into turn number 11. And Carroll's been very tidy, especially after last season at Sonoma, which is such a technical racetrack for these big, heavy cars on street tires. He was able to keep the tire temp in it. Same thing at Button Willow. The car control that Josh Carroll has allows him to keep the heat in the tires down, and he doesn't overheat them in these short races. It's so easy to do that if you carry too much speed and slide the rear end. Onto the front straightaway now to complete our second lap. Cross the line for Josh Carroll. The first lap was a 1:51.3 for Carroll. He'll go faster, a 1:49.7. That's a purple lap for, that's Craig Dale, who's actually gone out front. He's gotten by Josh Carroll. So moved Dale in the 78 to the race lead. Carroll down to second, 59 thousandths behind as they came across the line. Donny Yorke in third, Alan Hauser fourth, John Nguyen in fifth. Gene Meynet falls to sixth. Then Kevin Missig, Christian Paluzzi, Darren Griffith, and Patrick Howe, the rest of your top 10. On board still with Josh Carroll, who obviously had Dale right with him. Now we're on board with Christian Paluzzi, who runs in 8th place. You see that's Kevin Missig just up the road. Exiting turn 2, such wide corner exits here. So many different lines you can take, all about what the tires can handle here. Not enough banking to completely lean on it here at Auto Club Speedway. Again, relatively low banked, low grip racetrack that even in the NASCAR stock cars, it's a fairly big lift here. As Patrick Howe now works his way through turns 3 and 4. And just up the road from him is Darren Griffith in the 711. So at the line last time through, 59 thousandths was the difference between race leader Craig Dale and Josh Carroll. And I mentioned how wide the banking is here, and the slipstream effect that you'll get, especially heading down into turn number 1, is going to make for a lot of close racing heading off into that first corner at speeds climbing well into the triple digits, probably past 120, 130, maybe even 140 miles an hour before a little bit of a lift to set the car and then back on throttle again. See up the road, that's a 770 or 711, excuse me, of that's actually the 114. Who are we on board? Patrick Howe we're on board with, which would make that, might be a different vehicle. Actually, it could be Sky Chan as well in the 0 car, not in a Spec Corvette category. Howe thunders under the bridge on the back straightaway on the brakes for turn number 11. And keeping off the curbing there on the right and the left. And across the line for our third lap to complete our third one. That's Craig Dale out front now by 43 thousandths of a second over Josh Carroll. Awful close between those front two. Not a purple lap. It was 2/10 slower that time for Dale. So it's Dale, Carroll, Yorke, Hauser, Nguyen, your top 5. Then Gene Meynet, Kevin Missig, Christian Paluzzi, Darren Griffith. Griffith's going to jump up to 7th actually across the line that time. Move Missig back to 8th. Patrick Howe down at 11th overall, 10th in Spec Corvette. On board now with Josh Carroll, negotiating the infield section here. Continues to run in 2nd place, at least at the line, but he leads the race overall as we come across into the infield section. Juke to the left, keep off the curb there. It's a pretty tall one. Don't want to upset the car. Bit of a bounce off the right-hand curb. Break in a straight line all the way out wide. And then tuck it in real tight for a point and shoot. And Carroll's done a great job of getting the power down without sliding the rear end of that car. And we'll start rowing through the gears again now in the infield section. So interesting to watch Carroll drive in so straight. And here's John Nguyen doing the same thing here, trying to get this car squared up for corner exit. And throttling up now down the straightaway. Into the braking zone now for turn number 11 for Nguyen. He is following Alan Hauser in the 998, who's just up the road from him. Hauser has been running a little bit slower than the two guys in front of him, a 152.1. It's about 0.3 off the race leader's pace. So we come across the line this time through. Could be expecting the white flag either this lap or next. Craig Dale, a 149.199, 6/10 up the road from Josh Carroll now. Josh Carroll comes across the line in second. Then it'll be Donny Yorke in third. He's fallen about 2.7 off the race lead. Then it's Alan Hauser, John Nguyen. Nguyen is half a second back from that fourth place 998 car. Then Gene Meynet, Darren Griffith, Kevin Missig, Christian Paluzzi, the rest of your front runners at the moment. Carroll through turns 3 and 4. Now, I'm not sure. I don't see Craig Dale in that in front of Josh Carroll, so not exactly sure where he would be. But watching Carroll, that was a very shallow entry to turn 5 right there, and big slide there for a moment. Going to track out. He's got that car on the edge of control, dancing on throttle, now throttling up towards the run down to turn 6 and 7. That's the left-right combination. Back to the right, a bit of a bounce there. Then he's going to break in a straight line here. He's going to track all the way out and then tuck it in very, very tight for turn number 8. Bit sloppy there, catches a curb on the driver's right side of the racetrack, and then he'll throttle back up. Josh Carroll should be the one leading this race, although I see Craig Dale continues to be the one that shows up first on the timing and scoring. Now on board with, looks like this is Christian Paluzzi. And he runs back in 9th place behind Darren Griffith by about 1 second. You can see him up the road in that silver 711 car. And following him into the left-right combination, staying far away from those curbs on the left-right combination. Curbs can help you rotate in the slower corners if you want to stay off them in the faster stuff. See Paluzzi taking a wider line into turn number 8. Not going quite so straight. He's sort of arcing it in and taking a more traditional apex to it. Cross the line this time. Craig Dale, again, showing up first on the timing and scoring. Then Josh Carroll, Donny Yorke, Alan Hauser. Then John Nguyen, 4th and 5th. Gene Meynet, Kevin Missig, Darren Griffith, Christian Paluzzi that time through. Not sure on the status of a white flag. Would expect it either this time or next. No checkered yet in this session, from what I can see. And now down into the infield once more, riding on board with Josh Carroll. Kind of tiptoeing through the infield section now. Looks like it looks a little bit off pace here, so maybe this is the recalibration for the second race of the day. No checkered flag here on the session yet. Might come at the very end. Through turn number 5. Now, Paluzzi's still under throttle, though, in the backdrop. I see him still rolling through turns 1 and 2. Yeah, so Carroll's off pace for sure. And so is John Nguyen. So this is going to be our reset for our second race of the day. Looks like either Craig Dale is showing up first on the timing and scoring, but it shows him 6/10 up the road from Josh Carroll, who we didn't see anybody in front of him. So not sure why that is the case. But Donny Yorke 3rd, Alan Hauser 4th, John Nguyen 5th, then Gene Meynet, Kevin Missig, Darren Griffith, Paluzzi, and Patrick Howe. The rest of your top 10 in Spec Corvette, presented by Nanking Motorsport Tires. So now we're going to gear up for our second race of the day, which we're going to invert the field for this and basically set everyone up from slowest to fastest and go again for a little bit longer. And given the tires are a little bit hot, those that have been sliding their cars around are going to feel this a lot worse than the drivers that have been kind to their rubber. And that's why I think Josh Carroll's got the winning combination here. We saw him dance around just a little bit, but the car was still very much under control. And here's the lineup procedure now. You see the 79 of, that should be, maybe it's a 78 car, Craig Dale pulling in front. See the rest of the field kind of lining back up, and we'll turn them loose again. We had a standing start at Buttonwillow at the tail end of last season. That was a spectacular show. We are going to be doing a rolling start for this one, though. Christian Paluzzi going to pull up towards the front of the field. He and Patrick Howe will be the ones starting on the front row of this. There's the checkered flag officially for that first session. And now with the field relaunching and getting set up again, we'll run through some of the list of sponsors that are here with Spec Corvette. A big thanks to many of the suppliers for the parts for these cars. Penske Racing shocks in all these cars. Series coilovers. Nanking Motorsport, of course, everyone running the NS2R 295 3018 tire. Willwood disc brakes, of course, TPS Motorsports, the official Corvette racing parts supplier. Redline Oil, lubricating the engines and the fluids in these cars. Track Spec Motorsports for the hood vents, racing radiators, aero, and sway bars on these cars. Spec Racing, the official Spec wheels and prefab roll cages of Spec Corvette. And, of course, Sparco USA for all the racing suits, belts, seats, and more for Spec Corvette, presented by Nanking Motorsport Tires. Again, you're watching Spec Corvette from Auto Club Speedway, the first round of the 2021 season at a road course that, as far as I know, will not really exist in a couple months. It's getting basically turned into a short track. I'm not sure if the road course is going to remain there. There's a look at the sponsors that help the Spec Corvette series exist and sort of get everyone aligned and make the Spec series so exciting. Again, these cars are stock LS6 engines and are all dyno tested with on a surprise basis to make sure everyone's behaving. 380 horsepower from the rear wheels from C5 coupes or hatches, with 200 treadwear Nanking NS2R street tires, which are sort of the limiting grip factor here, which make for great racing. I'd always venture to say that street racing or street tire racing is more exciting than slick tire racing, because the drivers have to pay a lot more attention and care a lot more about the grip level on their cars to make sure that they don't burn them up. All right, pacing for our second race here with an inverted grid for Spec Corvette. That should put Patrick Howe and Christian Paluzzi on the front row for this one. Josh Carroll towards the back. John Nguyen will restart this race essentially right in the middle. And I think that puts Nguyen at a pretty big advantage. I think he's got more pace than he's showing right now, and I think this is going to give him an advantage here in this secondary race. So rolling up onto the banking here for our second race. Re-racked and restacked for Spec Corvette, presented by Nanking Motorsport Tires. Waiting for the green flag to fly with an inverted grid at Auto Club Speedway. There it is. Green flag flies, racing again in Spec Corvette under the flag stand. 3 wide, car up the inside on the apron. Driving through the field, still 3 wide as we head off into the banking for turn number 1. Looking 4 wide maybe as we head onto the black stuff in the first corner. We got to get single filed out here to get into the braking zone properly. On board now with John Nguyen as he negotiates this field. Car slower up on the high side, and he's going to juke to the inside for the braking zone for turn number 3. On the brakes now, down to 4th, then to 3rd. And tiptoe it in to turns 3 and 4. Keep the tires up underneath you. No, not a whole lot of dust kicking up from in front. Everyone's staying on the blacktop here. Has a look to the inside. Can't make it stick, so he'll back off for now. Door open slightly. Not willing to get in there just yet. Car way wide. That's a red car. Could that be the 63 of Donny Yorke potentially running wide there a little bit? Now the run down to turns 6, 7, and 8. The far side of the infield. On the brakes, look at the red car on the inside. He's going to outbrake himself a little bit. He's looking to maybe pass the 7-11 of Darren Griffith. Couldn't quite get alongside him. Going to have to throttle up again. Big overcorrection there by John Nguyen, steering that car straight on throttle and now closing in on the car in front. Has a look out to driver's right. On the brakes now for turn number 11. Going to stay alongside, real slow. Leave plenty of racing room. Nicely done, gentlemen. Keep it on the road and throttle back up to complete the first lap. Still side by side. I think Nguyen might have this here. A lot of sun glare. Can't quite see, and neither can he. Looks like he's gotten by that car as we climb the banking to complete our first lap. Across the line, who's going to be the first one across? Patrick Howe was the one that started on pole. Josh Carroll, Craig Dale still showing at the top of the board. Josh Carroll comes across the line. Then Donny Yorke, Darren Griffith, Christian Paluzzi, John Nguyen, Kevin Missig, Patrick Howe has fallen all the way down to 8th place, a lap time of 2:02.8 to start this race after he started on pole, so not where he wanted to be. Still on board with Nguyen, following looks to be Christian Paluzzi in the number 9 up the road. It's about 3.5 tenths behind him as they cross the line into the braking zone, down to 3rd gear again. A lot of glare out the windshield. That makes it so hard to see. Now this is Looks to be Patrick Howe's on board here. And again, Howe was the one that started on pole for this race, but dropped to the tail of the field and might have gotten spooked by the car that came up 3 wide on the inside. It could have been Josh Carroll that had done that. Either that or Donny Yorke. Both gained a bunch of positions in the opening lap. Super aggressive start. Look at Howe run all the way out over the rumble strip on the exit at turn number 4. And carries some speed on down, but that's a tricky position to be in. The banking here, as I mentioned before, is high, but not high enough to really catch these cars if you barrel off in there too hot. And kind of an accordion effect here in turns 6 and 7. Field lined up, nose to tail. Carroll out front, Donny Yorke, Darren Griffith, Christian Paluzzi, the top 5. And there's Josh Carroll out front. Nice tidy line through the cones on the left-hand side. Very bumpy this final sector. And then cross that transition up onto the banking. Car's going to slam down there on those Penske Racing shocks. And across the line this time, Josh Carroll should be the one to come across the line first, and he will be. Then Donny Yorke, Darren Griffith. Craig Dale is supposedly in this race. I haven't seen that car out front, even when it reports him out front. Not sure what to make of that. But Donny Yorke, John Nguyen, Darren Griffith, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And Kevin Missig, Christian Paluzzi, Patrick Howe continues to lose some time. A 1:58.8. That was 8 seconds off pace of the race leader, Josh Carroll. So maybe some trouble there for the number 44, Patrick Howe. A little bit offline there for Carroll. Now on board with Paluzzi. There he is. About a second and a half back from Kevin Missig, who's that car just up the road, turning into the infield. Visibility is a big issue right now with that sun hanging low in the sky, really impeding the visibility in the first part of this infield section. And going to be a big distraction for the drivers right here through turn 5, just completely blinded by the sun. Nice apex there for Paluzzi. Will throttle back up. A little bit of a wiggle on corner exit, gathers it back up nicely. Looks like he might be closing in just slightly on Kevin Missig. It was a second and a half at the line last time by. Left, right through 6 and 7, and then into 8. We'll see what line he takes up the road. Missig, very point and shoot. It looks like Paluzzi is going to take a nice, tidy, more traditional line right up against that inside curbing. Speed's climbing up here, probably the top of 4th gear, close to it. Then on the brakes again, down to 3rd. Here is Kevin Missig, and he has a look at Darren. Actually, that could be. That's a red car. Is that Donny Yorke potentially in the 63? It looks like it is. And they're going to throttle back up side by side through the last couple corners here. And climb up onto the banking. That red car is a little bit wide. And Missig hugging the inside tight as they climb up onto the banking. Big slam down there on those Penske shocks across the line this time. Lap 3 complete. We'll see where Missig is in relation to who. Going to cross the line. He is following very closely to one of those red Corvettes. It shows that Darren Griffith is the car in front of him. On the banking, these cars can stick nice and tidy on that white line thanks to the Nankang NS2Rs. Nice, easy, short way around on the inside. Braking offline just a little bit is Missig. On the brakes, downshifting once, twice. Real tight line. The red car is a little bit wide. That's going to leave a great opportunity to do a crossover. Nice line there. He's going to throttle up, go to driver's right. Great run for Missig up driver's right. Now on the binders for turn number 5. Go down, leave a little bit of space on the inside. Now he's going to tuck in tight for the exit of 5, so move Missig up 1 spot. Well done pass to drivers right there at the exit of turn 4. About halfway through this race, still on board with Missig, carrying so much speed through the middle sector of this track. On the brakes, going to track out a little wide, then tuck it in. Here is Christian Paluzzi. He is chasing Kevin Missig in that 114. Actually, that's who it should be. And up underneath the bridge on the back straightaway. There's John Nguyen, who's up to 4th, was chasing Donny Yorke in the 63. Big bump there through the last couple of corners. That section of pavement is so worn out, so bumpy. Up to gear, that's 4th gear. onto the banking and across the line this time to complete lap number 3. Josh Carroll goes purple, a 150.3. Craig Dale behind him about a tenth of a second. Then Donny Yorke, John Nguyen, Darren Griffith, the rest of your top 5. And Nguyen's got Griffith right behind him. They're in a tight battle through the first and second corners here. Can't see him. Griffith is behind John Nguyen as we roll through the first corner here. A nice, tidy line. Josh Carroll working through the infield here as John Nguyen is just entering. Driver's left, curb there. Now to driver's right. Here's Carroll out front. He has had a very easy time today being able to hold on to the top spot. Nice line here. He's been braking in such a straight line and just turning in super sharp and letting the car throttle up on exit. A little bit wide that time, but it'll get the power down nicely. Bumpy back straightaway here into the braking zone. Cars up ahead of him as well. Some lap traffic potentially for Josh Carroll to have to deal with. Not using a lot of the curbing through the chicane, which is a bit of a surprise to me. I thought these guys would be hammering the curbs to try to get the car to rotate, but a bit taller and more consequential curbs than we saw at places like Buttonwillow and Sonoma. And Carroll will climb up onto the front straightaway this time through. And seeing a flag waving, is that checkered? It looked like it could have been to me. I couldn't quite tell what flag that was there across the line for Carroll. 152.24. John Nguyen with all the glare. He's cheering inside the car as he comes across the line right behind one of his competitors. That was John Nguyen chasing Darren Griffith, I believe. Actually, that's Donny Yorke, I believe, in the 63 car. That was awful tight there between those two. Kevin Missig, Christian Paluzzi, and there is the checkered flag for this race. That was very entertaining there between John Nguyen and whoever he was chasing. I believe to be Donny Yorke there at the very end. Kevin Missig, Christian Paluzzi, Patrick Howe, who started this race on pole and just couldn't hang on to it, didn't have the pace. I thought something could have been wrong with that car. He's still about 8 seconds off pace from the rest of the field. Will come on back in 8th place in Spec Corvette presented by Nanking Motorsport Tires. Here's a look at the race results. And perhaps there was an explanation for why Craig Dale was sort of attached to Josh Carroll. I almost wonder if there was a transponder sitting into the trunk or something, triggering the timing and scoring. But those two seem to be locked together, but I didn't see the 78 at all when he was reported to be in front of Josh. So curious there. But Josh Carroll out front for both those races, 152.24, the quickest lap of the second race. Then Donny Yorke in third, John Nguyen fourth, Darren Griffith, Kevin Missig, Christian Paluzzi, Patrick Howe, the rest of the finishers here in Spec Corvette presented by Nanking Motorsport Tires. What a race. There's more going to be happening tomorrow afternoon. I will not be there for it. But you can, again, like the page here on Spec Corvette on Facebook and make sure that you join to watch more racing. Again, this series is going to be happening quite a bit all over the country this year. But here's a look. Let's have a look at your race 1 results from a little bit earlier in the day if we could. And there are your results for race number 1. Carroll, again, seeming to have this combination figured out. And I think he's driving to the tire in an interesting way. He's not wearing out the rear tires by sliding the rear. He's driving at very point and shoot. And considering we're on a street tire, you don't have a lot of grip to lean on to carry that rear end through the corner. So I like the strategy that he's got, and it's worked out very well for him, not only last season, but starting off this season in the right way. So Josh Carroll winning both races here. Donny Yorke, John Nguyen having a great battle to the end. Darren Griffith, Missig, and Paluzzi, Howe, all new drivers, having a really good time here today. That's going to conclude race 1 and 2 for Spec Corvette presented by Nanking Motorsport Tires. Here, we'll roll through our sponsors one more time. Of course, Spec Corvette on the Penske Racing shocks, the coilovers that we're running on here today. The NS2R 295/3018 tires, Willwood disc brakes on the 6-piston big brake kit. Of course, racing fire suppression systems as well. TPS Motorsports, the official Corvette racing parts supplier. Redline Oil, the official racing oils and fluids. And Track Spec Motorsports, the hood vents, racing radiators, aero, and sway bars on these cars. Spec Racing, the official spec wheels and prefab roll cages of the series. Sparco USA, of course, driver safety, racing suits, belts, seats, and more. You've watched the Spec Corvette presented by Nanking Motorsport Tires. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow for the conclusion of the weekend at Auto Club Speedway.